I'll do a quick intro. I'm on my best behavior. Emma's asked me to be on my best behavior. Cool. So this is the 16th podcast, 16th episode for the Climb and Flow podcast, and today's guest is none other than James McHaffie. James is known for his bold and hard trad ascents, with more than 200 ascents of E7 and above. Does that sound about right?
Be around that, yeah.
Yeah, and a few 9As under his belt. Yeah, he seemed to be like a relentless trad climber.
Yeah, yeah, trad was, what I was brought up with, it's still my main love.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I was younger, it was all about kind of on-sighting stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get into climbing?
I went to the climbing wall, in my mid-teens, really liked it. My dad was a climber in McHaffie, asked him to take me out, and we did like a few really good longer multi-pitch trad things, one called Troutdale Pinnacle, one
Yeah.
called Little Chamonix, one called Gillican Buttress, all within the space of a month, one winter between 95, 96, and just loved it. And after that, I reckon I was climbing almost every day. Once I got
Okay.
into it, almost every day for years.
Okay. Yeah. So w was it plain sailing? Was it plain sailing moving into climbing?
Yeah, no, opened up a different world. I mean, I guess early on as well, a friend Hockin failed to meet me at a crag called Lower Falcon. So I got into soloing, soloed a VS called Spin Up
Okay.
and a hard VS called Funeral Away, which as like a novice at the time, these were like not too far off as hard as I could lead.
Yeah.
But it opened up a different world because, it was back in the day before mobiles. Finding partners wasn't always easy,
Yeah.
but it meant, um, you could just do a lot of really good climbing out on your own quite fast. We don't have to plug in runners or
Yeah.
worry about ropes.
Yeah.
Uh, and I knew you had to be obviously very careful. So it developed quite a careful climbing style, but it developed good technique, good endurance, and it was also ideal training for but any bold trad climb. Soloing is the best possible training within reason
Okay.
for it.
Okay. That's pretty intense, right? I think how old were you when you started doing that?
15, 16.
Okay. So did
But yeah,
you was that more carelessness? Was that more I'm not saying careless. I guess at that age you're super confident and just kind of jump into things without really thinking about the potential consequences, right?
yeah, no, I mean, at the time, yeah, looking back, I mean, there were quite a lot of moments that were outstandingly dangerous.
Yeah.
Looking back with my, I'm 44 now, and fairly cautious approach nowadays. And I rarely solo, other than kind of classic rock style stuff that I'm super comfy on. But yeah, for almost a decade, I was soloing. Yeah, I'd like to say probably 90% of my climbing was soloing
Okay.
on the mountain crags, but not all of it was cavalier. Most of it was very controlled stuff that was well within my capabilities. And
Okay.
and yeah, the fact is it was fairly controlled. Um, yeah, you do develop a different climbing style to what you do when you're leading or on sport climbing.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? A much more cautious style of climbing.
So like talk us through, I guess, your mindset. What do you mean by cautious? Are you picking grades that you feel are within your limit? Have you got a particular mindset?
No, no, no. I mean, just um. Well, the fact is, a lot of the great soloists are all still alive.
Yeah.
People like Catherine Destevel, Peter Croft. Um, but they all generally cut down what they did, but they were just um a good awareness about things that they could get up, and also probably pretty good at down climbing and reversing if they've kind of if you like sometimes I would reverse from high up climbs if it was maybe damp or I just wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
So you get good at slightly different um styles of climbing is what you see in the modern era. But and the fact is, when gear was poorer, right up in the 1970s, 1980s, a lot more people used to solo back then. It's gone out of vogue more recently, apart from kind of Alex Honnold, who's kind of glorified a bit with the movie Free Solo.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just things have changed, and I think that's a good thing because some people did die soloing. But the emphasis nowadays is more about projecting, sport, bouldering.
Yeah.
People are less interested in trad and massively less interested in soloing.
Yeah. But I guess in the olden days, when people had more primitive gear and less of it, I guess the mindset then was the leader doesn't fall, right?
Yeah, that's when my dad was brought up, the 60s basically. It was probably the 70s that things started to change a bit.
Yeah.
Some cams came out to revolutionize climbing.
Yeah.
And yeah, people started taking lobs more
Yeah.
regularly, standards got pushed, decent rock shoes came in a bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel that there was a moment, I mean, reading through your blogs, um, do you feel that there was a moment that you kind of thought, actually, yeah, this falling stuff is quite important?
Uh, Actually, when I was younger, I found it hard. So I didn't actually fall off a lot.
Okay.
Because I was soloing so much that when I got on trad leads, I found it hard to, and it took a while to get into the mindset where I can push it out, really quite, beyond as close to the limit as you can, above all right gear, just because I still felt in the soloing zone.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess late 90s, eventually was getting on. I did sort it out a bit, and early O's, where I would, could push it out,
Yeah.
um, where I didn't feel like I was soloing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was good because on the harder bits on the dangerous bits of some serious routes like E6 and E7s, they felt just totally piss because I was soloing big mountain crags, up to like E4s, the odd E5 in the lakes. Then and certainly like if you're doing multi-pitch E2s, even soloing without a rope, then the dangerous bits on E5s and sixes just don't feel dangerous at all. Not really. You've got a big margin for that level of danger.
Yeah. Okay. I think probably a lot of people that would be listening to this stuff would probably think like soloing E4s, E5s seems like yeah, impossible, right? I think a lot of people that might listen to this will probably be climbing like E1s, E2s, maybe a few higher on rope, and that'd be quite intense enough. So, what's your mindset like when you're apart from, I guess, knowing, I guess, being comfortable to down climb? Like, how do you control your, I guess, fear when you do feel it?
You mean like on soloing or on trad
Yes,
climb?
soloing, yeah,
Oh yeah, I mean, well, I do. Yeah, like I say, I don't really solo nowadays. I've gotten, I've basically lost the head for it, which is ridiculous because I reckon, for a decade, I bet nobody, you know, yeah, I reckon I've clocked in more mountain crag soloing than pretty much anyone in certainly the lakes in Wales.
yeah.
And but yeah, I haven't got the head for it now.
Why,
Or
why?
I kind of can do if I need to, but but when I was younger, I loved it, and I say I backed off. I rarely did down climb, but I
Yeah,
did get good at going up and down certain sections until I was comfortable on, until I'd chalked up some feet, yeah, dried off some wet holds or whatever,
yeah.
and then to continue. Um, yeah, but
So,
like I say, when I was younger, I used to love it. I remember on site soloing an E3 in the lakes called Cruel Sister up on Pave Arc, and then I walked back around and then speed climbed it as fast as I could. You know what I mean? That's just that. And the fact is, it releases very powerful chemicals when you're soloing. It is, um, you know, yeah, it's like being on drugs.
yeah, well, it's so intense, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and but it was just, yeah, I say it was just fantastic. All I needed was a chalk bag, a pair of boots, and I could do dozens of routes, like big, multi-pitch routes. I could do them
yeah,
in just a couple of hours.
yeah, yeah,
Could do
yeah,
like 20 or 30 routes and hammer it, and I used to be in a fell running and could trot between the crags,
yeah,
do like the niche, my dad's E2 on Lower Falcon, do Kidnap, do Dedication, these E1s2s, then run along to Shepherds, do a lot there, run along to Goat Crag, do like Tumbleweed Connection, 3-pitch E2,
Yeah.
you know, and it was just, these are all really good routes. And
Yeah.
you're just able to knock them out. And when I lived in Ambleside for a while, so I used to go on a pave arc, solo load routes, then run back over in Borrowdale, and then DOS at mum and dad's house when they lived there.
Okay. Yeah. So that's so what do you think's changed? Why did you do a lot of soloing then and not so much now?
Poor. Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm in my 40s, somewhere time in my 30s, my head changed, over time. And I didn't, I became, yeah, I lost the love for it, I guess. And also, I knew something within me had changed. And let's say when I was younger, I just thought I'd be able to solo things like Tumbleweed Connection when I was a
Right.
granddad, I was in my 70s. But it's not the case, Um, nowadays, soloing even something like Tumbleweed Connection that I've done, a ton in the past would be a big deal. So I could do it, but I don't particularly want to.
So
There might be, I
what's
might get
tumbleweed
high on it.
connection?
What's that?
What's tumbleweed connection?
It's an E25C on
Okay.
Goat Crag. It's one I really liked, and I used to solo it quite a bit.
Yeah.
But that's just an example. Let's say I've soloed hundreds of that style of routes,
Yeah.
in England, Wales, and um, but yeah, there's probability, quite a chance that I would get high on it and not want to be there. And you
Yeah.
can't, whereas before I really wanted to be there. I wanted to be high up without a rope on
Yeah.
my own, enjoying the movement, and I would really love it. Whereas nowadays, there's a chance that I could just, feel a bit stranded and
Okay.
just, deeply unpleasant. And that's let's say as I've gotten older, I have, in my 30s, I went through a period where I did, something within me had changed, and I ended up in positions that I wasn't enjoying, and eventually, a bit like being the old dude at a rave. I don't want to, I just thought I don't want to be here anymore. But it's good. I can still, like I say, I can solo easier routes, and like I say, I could solo hard routes if I needed to, but I don't want to.
So you
The
lost the
moment past.
motivation.
What's that?
You lost your motivation for soloing.
Yeah, well, basically it's something called choking, which is it was what happened to me. If you read sports psychology books, it's where experts can go back to being beginners under when they're under high stress.
Yeah.
Now, if it happens in a competition like a tennis competition, that's what it's a book called Bounce. I heard it in,
Yeah.
where a really good, I think, table tennis player just went to pieces in competitions and became, was like playing bad shots like a beginner. If
Yeah.
it happens when you're soloing, you can be totally fucked.
Yeah.
Excuse
Yeah.
the language on this podcast,
Right.
because you know the your life is on the line
Yeah.
if you choke.
Yeah.
And I have had it where I've choked, routes that I could do in a pair of wellies blindfolded. I've, had not good times on, and it happened in my 30s. So I did this thing in the lakes, like 100 extremes in a day, but it was right on the boundary line of when my head was changing. Do you know what I mean? It was,
Yeah.
and I knew I had to do it then, or when I got a bit older, I knew it was unlikely to be possible for me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what do you think created that change?
Well, I don't know. I mean, like I say, most soloists, a lot of good soloists cut down on soloing
Yeah. Okay.
at some point. And like I say, when you do a lot of soloing, you can get good at it. You're covering so much terrain, more, covering tons more climbing and terrain than anybody who climbs with ropes ever could do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because you could cover dozens of routes in a day, whereas they can do what, 5 to 10 max. That's if
Yeah.
they go in some.
Yeah.
So you get good at climbing that style. But the fact is, some holds can snap that look solid.
Yeah.
I've had it on routes where I've done the crux, grabbed a hold that looks solid, the bastard snapped, and I've come off. That's when leading.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So there is a level of fatalism, within soloing that you've got to take on board. And as I've gotten older, then I've been less willing to take that risk. And
Yeah.
also, it's like saying it's I've done a lot of the climbs that I want to do right around North Wales and the lakes, even and so, a lot of them I've a fair amount of them I've soloed under the grid of kind of E4.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to take the chance again and again and again. So,
Yeah.
like I say, in my teens and 20s, great. 30s started to reduce. Now I'm in my 40s. Just don't feel the need to take them risks.
Yeah. 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 I guess.
No, then like I say, no, and I've also just lost the ability a bit to take them sort of risks.
Okay.
And need to, I'm kind of accepting of that.
Yeah.
The time it was good in the past. It's the times, and I can still enjoy easier solos if I wish, but yeah, the time for that's passed for me.
Yeah. But I guess I guess rock is always eroding, right? Mm. And you can't always tell when something's gonna snap. And I guess when you go into the higher grades, you don't have the ability to comfortably stand somewhere where you're maybe having to move between holes and always having to hold on.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, I saw it as an extension of scrambling, and the fact is, a lot of walkers go scrambling,
Yeah.
and up to a level, I was probably miles more secure on easier rock climbs than a lot of walkers are on like Crib Goch or a grade two scramble. Yes, grade two scrambles where it gets into climbing. You know the score with grade two and grade three scrambles. A lot of walkers maybe would even have a go at them
Yeah.
without a rope. Things like Canavia and a rep. But the fact is, some of them do hurt themselves and die on when they start pushing it grade two, grade three scrambles.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But yeah, when I was younger, that's how I saw it. I just saw it as an extension of scrambling, and a lot of people do stuff without ropes. And also I saw it, when you're driving a car, if you do that, you just move your hands slightly, you could kill yourself and a lot of other people. So the actual risks involved in driving, I saw as much higher than soloing
Yeah.
for an expert climber.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it still probably are, if you've got the head for soloing. But yeah, and there's a lot of mechanical stuff can go wrong with a car that you haven't
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
control over as well.
Or other people.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you feel that the soloing, like the relentless soloing that you did early on in your career, helped you with your head game for trad?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, in the first decade, yeah, really good. I mean, it's just routes like Bells of Bells. I on-sighted that in like 45 minutes with Al Wilson in 2000. Camouflage. That was probably my first E7 on site, and it's quite bold. They're not that hard, these routes. Bells is probably 7A, Camouflage 7B,
Yeah.
but like you are going to take, you know, really dangerous. If you fell off certain points, they are really dangerous.
Yeah.
So it definitely helped my head for them kind of. A lot of E6s just felt a total piece of piss. If they were bold, they just compared with the solos that I was doing, they just felt really quite steady. And again, the boldish bit on E7s often felt steady as well.
Okay. I guess so. I guess the intensity of soloing helped you with, I guess, as soon as you're on a rope, it doesn't feel as intense. You feel safer, whether you are actually safer or not. It's a different matter.
Yeah, totally. Well, if you're like just super secure on kind of 5C, even the odd 6A-ish ground, just felt so secure on that.
Yeah.
Above a big run out or above dodgy gear,
Yeah.
high above dodgy gear. This is when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
kind of know the score a bit more nowadays because I don't solo as much. So, I haven't got as good a head nowadays on the dangerous routes. So not bold routes where you're just above good gear.
Yeah.
They've got an all right head for that now. But
Yeah.
the dangerous ones, know the score. And I can tap into that headspace that I had when I was younger, but it's, having to try a lot harder to kind of
Yeah.
gain it.
Yeah. So do you feel that there was, I guess you might know where I'm going with this, but do you feel that there was that all your trad experiences were a positive one, especially when you in your younger years?
Well, no, I mean, yeah. So, yeah, I had a ton of really good trad experiences. You know what I mean? Just with in the 90s, friends like Emma Twyford, we were going out doing like, walking out doing Central Pillaron-esque, when she was like 14, hiking in February. So
Yeah.
it's quite cold still. Um, but yeah, obviously Masters Wall, that was a grim a grim experience.
Yeah.
But like I say, I think it was grim because I think it's E9 Masters Wall if you went where Jerry Moffat went.
Right.
That's it. And so in its own way, it was positive in that it was the most powerful push of climbing I've ever done on site. Above high above skyhooks on tricky moves on the greenish rock. Um, but yeah, that was a grim experience. Let's say it's the biggest epic I've ever had, and yeah, it was more epic than it even described. You know what I mean? Because like I say, I thought I was doing E7. It was fucking E9. I got high on it. I had to drop the ropes and was clinging on for dear life for hours.
Yeah.
With fingertips bleeding and I thought I couldn't hang on any longer for ages. Yeah, it was proper epic.
Yeah. So I guess for any listeners out there, I think please correct me if I'm wrong. And I know you've probably talked about this so many times, but you were climbing Masters Wall. You had some really shit gear. You climbed above it. You got to I wouldn't say I wouldn't say ledge, but you got above your shit gear. And then you weren't sure whether you would be able to make the next moves or not, um, and had a complete meltdown.
Well, yeah, no, I didn't have a meltdown.
Right.
I kind of basically I got up to a crimp edge, and then there was a small crystal for my left hand and a side pull for my right hand. And I could stand on these crimp edges and swerve it from an inside, the toe to the outside edge, and stand and balance. And I couldn't if I couldn't move up, I couldn't move right, and I couldn't move up left to the good hold on Indian face, high on Indian face as a resting foothold before the upper cruxes. And eventually, I just thought, well, I'd done a lot of hard moves to get there, really pushy bit of climbing,
Yeah.
nearly kind of been really trying as hard as I could for 3 or 4 sequences lower down. So I took my ropes off and told my friend to run around to the top of the crag and throw them to me, Adam Wilde, but he didn't know the crag, so it took him quite a while. It's complex to find the top of the green gallery
Yeah.
above Masters Wall and the Great Wall. So I was hung there for a long time, and so I went back and did Masters Wall the way Jerry Moffat did it, which I think I'm the only person to have done that way. Otherwise, just from
Yeah.
listening from Jerry Moffat's description of it,
Yeah.
other people have traversed lower and took an E7 path, but I don't think that's the way Jerry went. And yeah, eventually the ropes did get to me, but I was in bits and pieces by the time they did reach me, and I managed to, I think, put some sort of slippery hitch. I'd thrown all the rack off because it was weighing me down. Uh, but yeah, I was fucking in a proper shit state when he eventually got the ropes to us, and I slid down like 50, 60 foot down in November
Yeah.
across the wall with these 2 9 mils tied together that he'd eventually managed to sling across. And it was just like proper epic.
Yeah. That sounds it like just about surviving, right?
Yeah, and like I say, I went back and red pointed Masters Wall, and I was going all right. Like, yeah, I did like Walk of Life and the E9 left of it, in 2 days.
Yeah.
And I got on Masters Wall, and it felt a much bigger lead than these two E9s. When I led it, I only realised how hard it was after I led it, and I went back and read Moffat's description and looked at the pictures that people had sent me about his first ascent, and it's only then that I realised that other people hadn't gone the way he went, and because Moffat was climbing really well, he was on site soloing Biggie fours in the mountains,
Yeah.
which not that many climbers in the UK will have regularly been soloing as well as he was in the mountains, and he nearly died on it. And I know of descriptions that he checked it out a lot. He knew it, he had it really dialed, and he
Yeah.
still nearly died on it.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, fucking hell, it was E9 3 years before Indian Face.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess one, like, how did that not true? Like, you still went back to climbing after that. Like a lot of people would have been in a scenario like that and kind of thought, wow, this climbing stuff, I'm giving this up. This is just not for me.
I could have given it up, and I thought I would have. I thought maybe I didn't climb for a week or two and was wondering how I'd be. And I went out with Nick Wharton. He might be the bravest climber I've ever climbed with. Like this guy in the lakes. He used to be a captain in the army,
Right.
but he's fucking gnarly. Excuse the language. He's just like I've never seen anything like it where it gets, imagine just getting below a crux, throwing in whatever gear and committing to it with no hesitation,
Okay.
with no, literally zero hesitation. First, so super efficient climbing style. But anyway, we had a day out on Raven Crag in Thirlmere and just did like maybe some E3s. But I think his kind of confidence just kind of wore off on me, and we had a nice day, and then I slowly started to build up again after that. But
Yeah.
it did give me a proper kick in the face and made me a lot more calculated because at that point I was just going all guns blazing, going all out. Um, on tricky, on these dangerous routes. Whereas I did start to be a bit more calculated in my approach
Yeah.
for these routes.
Yeah. So do you feel that that experience, I guess, apart from being more calculated with your approach to trad climbs after that, do you feel that um, that that moment when you were on Master's Wall, where you were where you stayed on for so much longer than you possibly thought you could, do you feel that that helped you in maybe some confidence that your that one's physical ability is so much better and stronger than what we give ourselves credit for?
But no, I mean, it kind of it knocked my confidence at the time because I thought it was E7.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, fuck me, it felt like I'd done an E8 to get where I stood. And looking back, it probably was around E8 to get where I was stood. Um, but yeah, I just thought I did a super epic, and yeah, it didn't really give me confidence,
Okay.
in terms of how much longer I could have. But when I was younger, I did was after some soul searching experiences. I did want to see what you could do when you were climbing into positions, where you had to use your kind of desperation to drive through it to see
Okay.
what see kind of that you can keep it together.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there I'd properly overcooked it.
Yeah. Okay.
But like I say, looking, but it was only 20 years later. It's only because I went back to do it properly, and I'd absolutely carefully, a few times, and I even backed off it. What was really funny. So I was climbing with Ferdy for the first time. I thought, right, I'll do Masters Wall. I've upped it like three or four times, even, know it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I got 8 meters, 8 or 9 meters below my on-site high point and bottled it. So I'm the only person. I was in Indian face in the groove, and I put in an RP0 and a skyhook, and I just thought, man, I couldn't push out on these hard sequences I'd on-sighted
Yeah.
like nearly 20 years earlier. It's just I was adamant I was going to die
Yeah.
with 30, and I just thought, I just wasn't feeling it. I thought, fuck this, I'm going to lower down off this RP0 or RP1 and a skyhook. So I'm the only person to have lowered off Indian face.
Yeah,
Um,
but I mean, a skyhook's only meant to what hold 4 kilonewtons, which is about 400 kilos of force, and then I think an RP zero is only like I think it's body weight, isn't it? I think it's is it 2 kilonewtons?
yeah, I mean, I hadn't calculated the thing. I just knew that if I'd carried on, I was just certain I was going to die. You know,
Yeah,
in, which was ridiculous because when you know the moves really
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and you'd on sighted past all these, and I got lower on a head point. I got 9 meters lower than on my on sight.
yeah.
It was just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, to me, that's not ridiculous, right? I'm guessing, like, I'm guessing that you probably, I think that that first experience on Masters War was probably so traumatizing. It's kind of logged in your mind that when you did put yourself on it, you wanted to be prepared for it. And I guess that was in the back of your mind, whether you were maybe aware of it or not. I'm guessing that negative experience was just logged in your brain and just going round, maybe unconsciously, and just kind of pushing those anxiety levels like super high.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, there was. Let's say it was the event in my 40, my 30 odd years of climbing. That was the one.
Yeah,
So yeah, but it's funny. Like I say, I did come back and lead it maybe a few weeks afterwards
yeah,
in a positive headspace. But like I say, it felt hard. And my friend who was a good climber, Luke, he fell off it seconding. You know what I mean? It is like, and he's a good climber, good sport climber as well.
Yeah,
And it's only after I led it, I thought that's actually really hard.
yeah,
A really hard lead.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well done for going back to it.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers, Kevin.
that's I think like after an experience like that, a lot of people probably would not go back to it. Yeah. Did
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I partly only went back. I was curious, after 20 years about where I'd got to. And
Yeah.
like I say, when I got back on my Grigri in the position, it's not an easy position.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like it's like being on the crux of a 5B5C move,
Yeah.
which might sound okay, but when you're on it for a long time, it
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is grim. And the thought of being there without a rope now, literally in my 30s when I was hanging on my ab rope, it made me feel ill
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about being in this position without a rope.
Yeah.
It, it just fucking and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess like just being back there, even on a rope on a gree was just probably transporting you back to that moment and thinking, how did I hold on?
Well, well, also, yeah, I'm glad I did make the decision because I would be dead if I'd committed to the move. The move above is hard.
Yeah.
What you're going for. You make a poppy move off bad feet to a sloping edge, and then it's all slopers for a few moves to gain
Yeah.
the easier moves on the right. And I was baked. There's no way I would have managed the moves if I'd committed to them.
Yeah.
So that decision did save my life, even though I nearly died
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
hanging tough, waiting for the rope as well.
So when you did finally climb it, was it like celebrations all around, or was it more like a relief of like, oh, thank fuck, I don't have to do that again?
It was right. It was shock. It was shock at the difficulty and the boldness. Like I say, it felt as hard as Indian Face to me, maybe
Yeah.
harder in its own way. And yet changed British climbing history for me. Um, so yeah, felt yeah, just give me a shock. I think would be the best way to describe it. And yeah, it felt like laying it to rest as well
Yeah.
because I've never been a person who likes mental blocks. I've had the odd mental block, and that route gave me a mental block.
Yeah. Yeah. What other mental blocks have you experienced?
Well, yeah, like I say, around choking and soloing. So, I wanted to replicate Ron Fawcett's 100 extremes in the lakes. And in 2003, I was going to do it. I was all set to do it. And I had a fantastic head for soloing then,
Yeah.
for soloing mountain routes fast. But I took a bad fall at Kilnsey, on exponential exhaustion, hit some dusty jugs after the crux, fell off pumped, and a thread in situ thread, the rock exploded in it, hit me in my ear. So then went to hospital and had some compression straps over my head. My balance was a bit wonky for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
And it put me off. I took it as a sign not to do it at the time. Then life got in the way.
Yeah.
But I still, at that point, in my late teens, early 20s, this was like the main thing I wanted to do in climbing. So I had to, but when I got into my 30s, I didn't have as good a head for soloing, and I did have to properly have a word with myself. I had to, um, have some moments where I'd sort myself out, where you take control of panic, where there was no panic. In my 20s and late teens, there was no chance of any panic. Whereas when I got into my 30s, there was a chance of choking, aka panic,
Yeah.
setting in, and I had to sort this out, before doing this Lakes 100 solos.
Okay. So how did you sort that out?
Yeah, like I say, just big days out, getting into the flow, minimize, stopping any coffee, and just try to tap into that early love and desire I had before soloing when I was younger. So yeah, I had big days out at Gogarth, the odd big day out in the lakes, just to make sure I had a chance of doing it. And because on the day when I set off on Central Buttress, Big E1 on Scafell, I didn't know if I'd actually end up backing off that. But then I did that, and I did get into what you'd call a flow state, and absolutely loved it the rest of the day. Just had
Yeah,
a fantastic day.
yeah,
Just motoring through a ton of fantastic routes and beautiful terrain.
yeah,
It was great.
yeah. So did you, I guess you managed to sort your head out and do the 100 E's in the lakes.
100 extremes, yeah. So yeah, like I say, started on Central Buttress, finished on Harlot's Face on Castle Rock, which was one of the first D1s in the Lake District, put up by Jim Burkett.
Yeah,
And yeah, Hockin, a friend, came round with me, and various other friends met me along the way. So it was a really good day. It's the best day's cragging I've ever had in terms of mileage.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, like when you do go soloing, like, yeah, like you say, you can cover so much ground, and there's not really no weight to carry, nothing, just kind of flying through stuff. Yeah, cool. Um, so yeah, quick question: is it just trad you're into, or do you do any other kind of disciplines? Like I've seen you've done a couple of hard sport ascents. Um, you do bit bouldering.
Yeah, no, I love bouldering,
Yeah.
but I never used to see bouldering as climbing.
Right.
I mean, to be honest, nobody did. If you look at the old guidebooks, there's just the odd bit in the back about the Bowder Stone. Um, so I just saw it as training for climbing.
Yeah.
But then I read in '09, I read Dave McLeod's book, around 2008, 2009, about the importance of bouldering. 9 out of 10 climbers make the same mistake. And I thought, oh, yeah, in 2 hours of bouldering, you can do more hard moves than you do in 6 months of trad climbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I did throw a lot more bouldering in 2009. Did things like Mr. Fantastic Diesel Power from the low start, where you can start on the right arete. And that was a bit of a game changer, for my climbing. It did. And then in 2011 did Big Bang, which is the hardest sport route in North Wales still, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, learned a lot about being strategic. Throwing in double rest days, doing double session days,
Yeah.
working weaknesses, that sort of thing. So yeah, it did break a bit of a performance plateau, just because most of my climbing is just going trad shuffling, doing routes of love. So doing a bit of sport and bouldering, can lead to improvements. But trad's still my main love, and to be honest, a lot of my hardest trad on sites I've done when I've done next to no sport climbing, like stuff like Terminal Twilight and the Leap when it was wet. It did that 2008, and it was just through going trad climbing a lot.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does it help? I know. Do you have specific climbing partners that you go with when you go and do kind of trad stuff?
Uh, Yeah, I mean, well, I guess I've climbed a lot with Emma Twyford over the years. We have great times. Brent Bransby when he's got free time, have
Yeah.
great times with him. Dan McManus. So yeah, fairly regularly. More recently, little Tom Pierce who's climbing did well. But it's whoever I could find to do
Yeah.
stuff really. Dave Rudkin,
Yeah.
Lewis Perrin. So yeah, close circle of friends. Nowadays, I'm more particular. When I was younger, I used to let anybody hold me.
Yeah.
Just bloody. There could be any Joe stranger climber in the street, and I'd take a big lob with them holding the rope. Whereas nowadays I'm a bit more particular, about who
Yeah.
holds my rope if I might be taking a big wanger on trad.
Yeah. Yeah. I get. Does that help with confidence, right? Knowing the belay.
Yeah, it's just people like me and Emma have had so many great days. When I go out with Emma, I know I'm probably gonna have a really good day.
Yeah.
Whatever we do, it doesn't matter if we fail at something. It doesn't matter if we get up something. It just when you associate somebody with having really good days.
Yeah.
With her, with Bransby, with Dan McManus, Lewis Parent, we're going to have a good time when we go out.
Yeah. I think when it comes to me, I think I'm quite particular about belayers and. Yeah, certain friends that I go climbing with, I'll perform way better because I've got the confidence, and other friends, I won't let them hold my rope at all because I know they might not be paying attention.
You look down and the ropes on the ground
Yeah, yeah,
behind you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more.
Or they're on the phone, or they're talking to their mate, or they're not paying attention.
Yeah, I mean nowadays, let's say I'm happy saying, "Oh, just taking a bit on." Could you take that green in a bit? That
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
thing. A
yeah,
bit more directive.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You talk a lot about history. You obviously do you like the history of climbing?
I love the history of climbing. My most prized possession are my guidebooks. And I love looking through the histories and the books or whatever, and reading about the first ascent
Yeah.
of it. And also my guidebooks are my most prized possession, because you do forget. And I look through my old guidebooks in the 90s, the O's or whatever, and doing stuff with friends, days that I've forgotten about. And then I read it, I think, fuck yeah, I remember doing that with, like, doing Wicked Willie with Rob Cheatham, who's no longer with us.
Yeah.
He left the world over 20 years ago. I thought, yeah, it was a really good deal. Chris Cowan, who again is no longer with us, we used to do trips to Wales, and I remember doing it's a hard, the hard VS of Roet on Pantifan. Do you know what I mean? But if I haven't got the guidebooks, I might sometimes not remember some of these days. And I love looking through the guidebooks and my history with the climbs, and also the first ascensionists
Yeah.
and other people's history with the climbs. Find it really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it is incredible when you look at some of these routes that the dates of when these things were climbed, and kind of looking back and thinking, bloody hell. I mean, these guys climbed that stuff in, I know, the early 90s, like, I know, Ron Fawcett on strawberries, and think he kind of looking back thinking, bloody hell, okay. In those days, I think, was it 86 strawberries was done? Yeah, something.
Uh,
Can't
Probably
remember the,
earlier.
pardon?
I
Maybe
think it might be
earlier,
earlier
maybe.
strawberries.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but kind of looking back, thinking about the dates when some of these things were climbed, you think that's crazy, right?
It was crazy because the boots they had were totally shit. When
Yeah.
I was playing Ed Drummond, for a bit about his life, I was doing like some routes. Thingy Paul Diffley, filmmaker, had given me a pair of maybe EB, some shit shoes, and I couldn't believe how crap they were. They were awful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the gear as well, right? I remember climbing Shadow Wall when I climbed it for the first time. There was, which is a VS, um, and it's quite exposed, kind of bit of climbing at the top. I remember seeing a rusty bored out nut stuck in there, thinking like this is what they climbed with, right? And they maybe had just like three or four of them on their rack.
Yeah. No, I mean how they got up stuff. So like, Javelin's blade put up in 1931. He won
Mm.
by B high above Idwell slabs. And it's not easy in rock shoes with a rack. It's quite bold.
Yeah,
Doing it in like plimsolls or whatever they were wearing would have been pushy as hell.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You're exposed. You're gonna fall for hundreds of feet if you if you fail on this climb, and be laid around the waist. Just
yeah,
wild stuff.
yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah,
1950, around 1950 plus or minus a year for what Joe Brown was doing. Just the quantity of amazing, intimidating climbs he was doing with
yeah,
crap gear. It
yeah.
just
And twill ropes
amazing.
tied around their waist.
Yeah, really brave, really good. If you look at footage of Joe Brown moving, he's a fantastic climber. Do you know
Okay.
what I mean? Like, and the fact is, just a lot of metal. Like you say, you can take all the wads today who are dead strong, and really amazing gymnasts and boulders and sport climbers. You put them on the routes that he was doing, I bet most of them would fail,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
even with a
yeah,
lot of ability. They just, because of that lack of kind of mental toughness and rigor
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
likes of Joe Brown's generation had,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and they'd a very different skill set.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, remarkable. Proper purple patch in UK climbing when Joe Brown was about.
Yeah, yeah. So, can you remember, can you remember the first time, just going off history, can you remember the first time that you took Emma climbing?
I do, yeah. Um,
And what was
so
that
yeah, I'd seen
like?
her at Keswick climbing wall a little bit, and her dad came up to ask me at Shepherd's Caff if I'd climb with her, and I think he said she wanted to climb an E1. So I said, all right, I'll go up to Crag. I would have been 17 at the time. I think she was like 12ish, and I sent her up the Grasp, which gets E2 now, but it got E1 at the time. I think it was a route of Dad, so Dad had written it up in the guide. And she put in a couple of runners, took this lob. Yeah, maybe even took a couple of lobs and then did it. And then that was the start of our doing a load of climbing together in the lakes. But there's no way. It's funny. Yeah, I used to be like youth and equity officer at the BMC and
Yeah,
organise lots of stuff for young people and as an instructor. done tons of work with young people. There's no way I'd ever do something like that nowadays. Just send, off you go. Imagine. But I guess I wasn't really a proper instructor at the time. I don't think I had my RCI even at the time. And
Yeah.
just and my thoughts on risk, because I was at the time I think I just soloed Piranha, this big E3 on Black Crag. So my sense of risk, you know, somebody's leading, sense of risk was pretty skew if I would have said.
Yeah. 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 No, I think she did she not have a did I don't know. It's quite incredible, right? Like at that age, just placing a bit of gear and just jumping off. Like a lot of people struggle with the idea of their gear holding.
Yeah,
Or,
no, she had
or
a tremendous head, and I know young people kind of can. Um, but yeah, like, and it's just fantastic to see what Emma's done in her climbing now. And when I go out, then again, she just can put in some really good at finding gear fast and
yeah,
doing hard moves high above the gear.
yeah,
That can hang tough forever. But yeah, I was impressed with it at the time, and let's say we had just in the '90s alone, we had so many great adventures out on crags. I mean, we did have a near miss one, so it was just after Masters Wall. I'd given her the big chat about sometimes it's better to back off than carrying on. She was only 14, still quite small,
right.
like height wise, and she set off on this E4 with me belaying called Nagasaki Grooves. So there were two guys in the same belay as us. A pitch up on Great End Crag in Borrowdale, and Emma climbed up, and she high above gear, and she was struggling height wise just to do this move.
Yeah,
And I was like, you might want to maybe come down. And she, I think she started to commit to the move a bit and started to barn door. It looked like properly barn door, like
yeah,
body going like that away from the rock. Like looked like she was on the way down. Literally, the guys on the beeler next to us were swerving out the way to get out of the way of her fall zone because she would have fallen. Well, yeah,
yeah,
she would have really hurt herself and probably landed, you know, somewhere past the belay or hit us. And she managed to reverse, but it was like that. That was one of the moments in the '90s, I think, for Emma.
yeah,
The moment where you think, all right, yeah, need to just have a lot of respect for these trad climbs.
yeah. And I guess for you, did that like I'm guessing for belay stroke, I guess mentor, because I'm guessing you were her mentor at that time. Like you have no control, right? All you can
I
do is
had no control, but I was. It was funny at the time, I mean, I was young and clueless, but I was angry with him.
yeah, okay,
And she was only 14, I was just because I'd given her this big speech just before, then she'd set off a bit too far,
yeah,
and I had no right to be angry with her. I mean, like you think, I mean, the people I've climbed with over the years, when I was younger, I mean, I feel sorry for like, I will have given him a truly horrendous time. A lot of my friends, Wes, he was beating me on this E7 called Spirit Level, and I started to barn door. I think a hull maybe snapped and I started to barn door, and it fantastically, I was going to be on the ground from 60 feet from near the top of the crag, and then somehow barn doored back in. It felt like the wind blew me. You know what I mean? Like just, and it's like that's one moment of just dozens with friends who were scared over the years. So yeah, it
yeah,
was
yeah,
right
yeah.
that I got scared with them.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the falling on trad gear. I think something that I notice a lot is I guess the mindset in the olden days was the leader doesn't fall right, and I think that's maybe down to primitive gear. And I think because of all the gear is so good, I think it's a great skill to be able to teach people to fall on their trad gear and feel comfortable with understanding what's good and what's bad. Um, because I think it reduces anxiety when you're actually climbing.
Yeah, for sure. Like faith in the system.
Yeah,
People who have taken a fall and they've seen the system work, a
yeah,
safe fall,
yeah,
will often, that has a profound. It can have a profound effect on people's performance. Because the fact is, if people aren't pushing, giving 100%, and if they haven't got faith in the system, they're unlikely to be giving 100%,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, in the climbing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think as an instructor, there have been for me definitely, well, quite a few. It's a very fine line, isn't it? um, to put people in a situation and you feel that you've done enough assessment of their physical ability and their capabilities to then put them in a situation and kind of go, right, okay, it's your turn. And then as the instructor, you don't have the control, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I do a lot of sport, similar to you at MCI. Do a lot of performance coaching. Sometimes I've got two people on a rope and I'll be sat on a rope next to them. Sometimes one to one. So I've had a guy who's on site, 3 4s with me.
yeah,
In the first E4, maybe left a couple of safety havens in after I'd gone up it first, but the last one I didn't. He was just on a clean fallout zone. I'd seen him climbing for a couple of days. Um, but yeah, anything where I'm getting people that they are properly getting airtime, I have, I'll have put some some gear in for them or double checked everything because some and I'd be yeah, I'll have definitely choice of the climb. It's pretty steep because sometimes friends have fallen off trad routes on things that I would have thought would be safe falls, and they've hurt themselves.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And also, and and I don't, I do a lot of teacher performance trad climbing for AMI instructors, and like I say, for these people who come into you and they might be pushing but somewhere between VS and E2 or beyond or whatever, the best thing you can give them is falling protocols. Getting nests of gear, warning the belay, checking the fallout zone. The fallout zone's clear, the gear's good. You've worn your belay, great. Yeah,
yeah,
if you're feeling all right, you can give it a go. Um, just because at some point between VS and E2, it's highly probable somebody's going to fall off. At them grades. I know I did.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, so you want the fall to be safe. You want them to start developing skills to be safe. I've had people come on courses who, as soon as they commit to a crux sequence, they just get the leg round the back, the rope around the back of the leg and stuff.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Just pure procedures for going to areas where they might fall off.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, you talk about Nesta gear. You're the
Yeah, so
yeah,
I always have often at least three runners if I
yeah,
can. Unless they're two bolts, two really good runners, I'll often have a minimum of three runners beneath a area I might fall off,
yeah,
and that means I'm less likely to fall off because I'm more relaxed.
yeah,
If I kicked a wire out accidentally, I've got two of the runners nearby, and it means if I needed to, I could always run it out further.
yeah,
Um, and like I say, nowadays I do warn the beeler. I'm going to go for it just because it helps. If it's you know trad lead could take you up to an hour, maybe longer sometimes. So your beeler isn't going to always be 100% with you,
yeah.
concentration wise. So just give it. Yeah, it's for their benefit to get them to get into a more brace stance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what you're going for it as in when you fall off, you warned them, or you're going for the crux
No,
move?
before setting off into the crux section
Right. Okay.
or a section that I feel a bit wigged out by.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think is it? I read somewhere that you quite often back up nuts with a cam below it.
Cam nearby, yeah, to reduce the drag on the wire.
Yeah.
It depends. Some wires are great for an outward pull and a downward pull, but the fact is the rope just shifting up and down, or like a bigger pitch, you're getting a bit and you've done a little bit of traversing. It might be getting a fair bit of drag some wires, and the lift can sometimes be upwards. But yeah, sometimes cam by a wire can reduce the drag on the wire, depending on the position.
Yeah.
And I might clip the cam a bit short on the wire to reduce the drag on the wire. So
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
often use that use that combo together.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. It's like something like a question. Are you a sponsored athlete?
I am, yeah, no, a DMM sponsor me and Boreal, and
Okay.
I've had a lot of different sponsors over the years.
Yeah, because for someone like for somebody of your climbing ability, um, like I find it hard to understand that you're not kind of a full-time sponsored climber.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I kind of semi regret because in my early 20s, I bet I could solo as well as anyone in this part of Europe. Do you know what I mean? Like I had a good head for it, and
Yeah.
I probably if I'd kind of wanted it more, I probably could have become a professional climber, but I kind of didn't have that foresight and that. I think the Masters will give me, like I say, give me a bit of a kick about sponsorship and about pushing it out. Maybe the reasons weren't always right for going for big numbers.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that gave me a bit of a welly.
Yeah.
And then the fact is now I'm aging. I'm 44. I'm on my way.
In the prime of
Like
your
I say,
life.
yeah, I don't want to be going miles above RPs, jibber jabber. And I still love climbing, but I'm gonna try and sail out gracefully. I
Yeah.
enjoyed, finished off classic and hard rock the other day, but I still need to free Mandela, but did it as an aid route that's in the book. And do you know what I mean? Those sort of adventures I still love,
Yeah.
and the safer adventures I still
Yeah.
love, but I'm not going to be doing super dangerous stuff.
Yeah, but I guess that has meant that you climb for yourself and you haven't had the outside pressure of having to keep performing that some sponsored athletes, I guess, do.
No, totally. And the fact is, Boreal have been totally awesome. DMM have been totally awesome, and I like it. Bill Boreal's mainly made in Spain, DMM's mainly made in Canberra.
Yeah.
Lots of friends work there. They don't. There's no pressure
Yeah.
to perform.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they are like companies that I'd like to do well by. If I can help
Yeah.
with their gear because I really like who works there and really like the gear.
Yeah. 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 So no totems for you then.
No, I mean, yeah, they do look nice cams. But yeah, my friend Darren, I climbed with Darren a bit last year. He's a friend, and he's a design engineer at DMM. He's given me some new prototype, like lightweight DMM things to try.
Ah, cool.
Using
So
them.
that might be coming out soon.
Well, yeah, you never know. Yeah, they seem dead good. And then yeah, I never used to trust microcams, but he designed the dragonflies, and I have actually used them quite a bit and lobbed onto the smallest ones.
Yeah.
So in the 90s and early years, I never used to carry microcams.
Yeah.
You used the
Dragonflies are
aliens back then.
Yeah,
What's
dragonflies are
that?
almost like an exact replica of the Fixer aliens when the design was bought by Fixer,
So
who
well remembered.
yeah
Yeah,
who redesigned the alien cams, didn't they?
that's it.
Yeah, yeah, the infamous alien cam, which I've seen them, but I've never used them or had or owned one.
So I used them in the 90s with I think my friend Al Wilson. I think he had quite a few.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess the difference between the dragonflies and the Fixate aliens is that the design is pretty much the same. It's just that the metal work used on the Fixate aliens is softer metal. So I guess it won't last as long, but it molds more into whatever you put it in.
They did mold. I mean, to be fair, let's say my friend Al Wilson, he was taking some good lobs. He was never afraid of taking good lobs in the 90s. We used to go over and do a lot of trad, both in the lakes and in Yorkshire when it was too wet. And yeah, he took some good rock lobs on the aliens.
Yeah,
And he's not a small guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Got
And
muscle.
they held and survived, right? Used
He did, yeah.
Cool. Um, yeah, what is it about I guess what it is about trying what is it about for you what it is about trying really hard that you get from climbing?
Um, well, I mean, I'm not sure about trying really, you know, trying really hard, particularly. All it was improving at climbing meant I could
Okay.
try more routes that I wanted to do. So when you've done a few E2s, and then you look up at like the Dinas Cromlech and there's a route called a classic E3 called Foil or Silly Roet, these
Yeah.
quite awe-inspiring routes um, to do. So to improve at climbing, it was just the ability to do more routes that I really wanted to do. But the fact is, trying hard does feel good as well. In fact, I think unexpected gains are twice as rewarding mentally as expected gains. So when you just make it up a climb,
Yeah.
that will have a much more powerful effect mentally than one that you've totally cruised and was miles within your comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So there has been like close calls, like the Arret. There's an 8A Arret on Grand Capuchin, and Jesus Christ, I just scraped a bit.
Yeah, yeah,
On sighted it with Bransby. But it felt fantastic at the time. Really exposed, just scraped up it. Same with Terminal Twilight. It was damp at the start. It was damp, in fact, for the first third of Terminal Twilight with Pete Robbins, and I was pumped to sin at 5 meters. So
yeah,
you're literally only 4 or 5 meters up this 35-meter climb, and I scraped up it somehow. But it was nuts, when you and your friend are sure you should be off at 5 meters, and
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
carry
yeah,
on
yeah.
busting it out. And oh my, but yeah, I just remember slapping this hold. I think my friend Ian Wraith, who lives in Clanberries, he was behind and he was laughing at how close I was to coming off hitting this top jump.
Yeah, yeah,
But it was unchalked, dusty, damp. It was like, yeah, it was really pushy
yeah,
to
yeah,
scrape up it, and it did feel fantastic. I guess some of these, like I say, I'm into having chummy days out nowadays. I like hanging out in my comfort zone, but yeah, I do remember it did feel good to push the boat out, and yeah, I have to say when I was younger, I lived for pushing the boat out.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
I wanted to, yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's quite rewarding, isn't it? It does, like grade doesn't really matter, but if you, as a climber, you're even when you're tired and you're having to work really hard to stay on and just about scraping up something, it's yeah, just getting to the top just by the skin of your teeth, right? It feels, feels very rewarding, right? A real buzz. Yeah, cool. Couple more questions. What mental challenges do you feel that you have to work on in climbing?
Ooh, mental challenges. Uh, hmm. I guess, yeah, motivationally, when you've been climbing a long time, your form comes and goes. So
Yeah,
for me, and I need to, write out things that I really want to do. And especially now I'm aging, I just think, well, what would I regret when I'm on my deathbed? What would I regret not doing?
yeah,
And so I need to write things down. Like, the hard one I did in Wales last year, I wrote down, had that as high priority last year or top priority, and wrote things down about how I was going to train for it, wrote things down about how sessions went, that sort of thing. So like I say, I'm not a project person. I know everyone loves projecting nowadays. I'm more a go out, do the odd thing. But yes, yeah, last year I did get stuck in a project, and occasionally I have got stuck in a project. But yeah, keeping motivation for things that you really want to do.
yeah.
I think
Okay.
that's a priority, yeah, for me mentally. So I'll often in the winters, to get me through the winters, I'll often write down a load of routes. Some I'll find a piece of piss. Some might be too hard for me, but I write them down. Some of them will be in beautiful areas. Then make plans to kind of go and try and do some of these climbs.
So how do you then motivate yourself to yeah stay on track with what you want to do?
Keep the end goal in sight.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Keep it kind of process based. So I guess I've had a formula. Since doing Big Bang, I've got for doing tricky-ish sport routes. Normally got a fairly good formula for you getting into gear. But this year I've struggled. So I've had the first climbing injury I've ever had, like some sort of A2 pulley injury. So I've you know been enjoying exploring, but performance is just the worst fitness I've had for several years. I've just you've not been motivated to maintain that same level
Yeah.
of volume of training that you did. Like, I looked through diaries in 2012 or 2015, and my God, I was just training all the time.
Yeah.
And so like when I was trying Big Bang, I'd do double session days, maybe Tuesday and Wednesday before work and after work. Do like 100 or 200 pull-ups, a load of core in the morning, then go and do like 5 laps on full roadside, 10 laps on Jerry's, and
Yeah.
another 100 pull-ups afterwards. Whereas this year I've done sod all. so I need to I need to write some things down that get keen for and you know, start to get motivated again. And it's interesting. I listened to a podcast with Niall and Ricky Bell last night, and you know, Ricky said that, you know, when he started his job at Mountaineering Island and maybe had a kid, how he pretty much didn't climb for a year, and that he, you know, he suddenly felt, you know, the second year he thought, right, you know, I've got to find my motivation again. So I
Yeah.
think, you know, for when you're at aging climber like me, it's just kind of similar. You know, you kind of just thinking, oh, what do I really want to do? Because I'm the fact is, I know there's a lot of people performing well in their 50s, but my mindset's changed now.
Yeah.
I'm just, I'm not feeling, I don't feel I want to be like pushing it out miles on big numbers. So I just want to think about what would I really like to do that I've not done. That's kind of what I'm thinking about, and how you know, and I have a good formula for how to get there. You know, I know how, yeah, the physical aspect of climbing are pretty well known about how to get good at nowadays. So for me, it's a lot about the mental game. It's
Yeah.
about, yeah, getting motivated to do these training sessions rather than just, you know, I can happily drink tea and coffee and sit in the sun with some friends
Cool. Yeah.
rather than do any training.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But that's good too, right? I think you've probably done so much climbing in, I guess, in your lifetime so far, and I guess as well as being an instructor, right? You're surrounded by climbing all the time.
Yeah, I think the scene in North Wales is exceptional. You know, there's a good team of boulderers who are always psyched to get out. There's good teams, people keen for trad stuff, good people keen for sport. So yeah, I think it's a fantastic part of the world for, you know, going out and doing stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like you're quite a meticulous planner.
Can be, yeah. Well, I wouldn't say meticulous planner, you know, but yeah, I've normally got things that I want to do. You know,
Yeah,
I've normally got basically 2 and 3 star routes. If I've not done them, they're on
yeah,
my radar.
yeah. But I
You know what
mean,
I mean?
like keeping diaries and writing things down and I guess planning your goals.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I am a diary. I've still got a written diary. I'm quite old school,
Yeah,
and I like writing down stuff. I like looking through old diaries. Going, God, you know, I remember you know, doing X, Y, and Z with such and such. It's kind of sentimental value, you know,
yeah,
to having a diary.
yeah, 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 yeah. What do you feel your mental strengths are in climbing?
Um, ooh, I guess just experience. I
Yeah,
think you know, I am a wily practitioner because I've done so much. Like I say, you know, on sighting on E6s, E7s, I've done a shit ton, hundreds and hundreds of that level. So I've good idea about what to expect.
yeah,
And I always, you know, I have a massive amount of respect for routes of this level. You know, I know, you know, E6 is, some guy was saying, oh, what can I do to, you know, in the next, he was on a course with me. He said, oh, what can I do to rook up to an E6 and on site it? And I said, well, you could do that, but I have a lot of respect for E6s. I don't expect to get up
yeah,
all of them. And even though I've on sighted hundreds, you know, some of them are really hard, some of them are E7. But yeah, I guess that sort of, I know I probably have a good idea about what's coming, so I've got a high level of confidence just from my past experience of mainly getting up these routes
yeah,
on site.
yeah,
Um, I have a, you know, good idea about what, you know, what sort of sport the sport grade's going to be, the feel of the dangerous sections, and yeah, any rests. I guarantee I'm not going to miss a rest when I'm on
yeah,
sighting. Yeah, route reading on the rock. I
yeah, yeah,
have a massive wealth of experience for.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's mainly what I can bring to
The
the
equation.
game. And
Yeah,
I've got a lot more self-awareness nowadays,
yeah,
you know, about, you know, my fatigue levels. You know, I'm not going to get on a tricky route when I'm feeling very tired. It was
yeah,
back in the day, I would jump on any climb at any time of day,
yeah,
start moving up, even
yeah.
though I might be baked.
Super excited, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just too psyched. Whereas now I know I might be in for an epic if I try stuff when I'm tired. It's time for the pub or the cafe.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's I think that takes I think it's a great skill, right? The self-awareness, tuning into yourself, where you're at, mentally and physically. I think something that I've learned definitely from Emma, the I think I really struggle with um, is I think my level of psych is always super high, and I think that means that I'm not always very well recovered. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I made mistakes. So I mentioned the good years, 2011, 2012, when I did Big Bang Meltdown. And 2015 was a good year as well. But the years, around that 2015 plus or minus a year or two, I didn't supply enough rest days and ended up climbing, trained quite a lot, ended up climbing worse than if I'd done no training at all.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Because if I just go climbing and do next to no training, still often on site 8 a.m.
Yeah.
If I go to Spain or anywhere like that. But I just remember having these years where I was just too baked. Your elbows are hurting a bit and you're just dead tired. You just not, so for me, it was important to, always throw in 2 rest days per week, consecutive rest days, to let everything kind of regenerate. But yeah, these, like I say, you're too psyched, you're just going to overcook it,
Yeah. Of
end up
course you are.
climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something I've learned from Emma and still working on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's it. I mean, the key thing for climbing hard, bouldering sport, key thing is just to rest loads. You
Yeah.
end up doing less climbing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think
Try at least you can get away with doing quite a lot of climbing because it's low intensity. It's hard on the head, but low intensity on the body. So you can get away with a lot of days on.
yeah. 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 Question. What would you do if you weren't climbing?
Ooh.
You
Um,
weren't a climbing instructor. What would you do?
I guess, the best job I ever had was with the BMC as youth and equity officer. And, I was able to pump a lot of money into relatively good causes, getting people on low income backgrounds into climbing in the outdoors on various courses. So I'd probably look for a cause a bit like that.
Okay.
I'm
Firing.
just becoming a part-time fireman now, so I'm finding my feet with that.
Are you?
um, yeah, but
Okay.
yeah, like I say, the a job a bit like that with the BMC around equity and youth opportunities, that sort of work is what I'd probably
Okay.
aim for.
What about writing?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I did. In fact, I looked at my diary for when I got Larry, my book out in 2023, and my diary is insane. For March, April, the bit where I was bringing it into fruition, and I felt high as a kite when I got that book out. I felt high as a kite. So I did start on a second book, which was a kind of climate change fiction thing, but I lost momentum with it. Life kind of got in the way. But you never know. I might.
Finish.
I do enjoy writing. I've just written a bit on classic rock, which is probably a bit chaotic. It's a bit about yeah finishing it and dad doing Travel Pinnacle over 1,000 times and where the roots are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do enjoy writing, so I definitely try and do a bit of that sort of creative writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think reading through your blogs, you're quite good with language.
Thanks so much for reading it, Kev. I just thought my mum read it. That's the only reason I put it out
Well,
there.
there's at least two people that are reading it now.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So did
I've
you?
got my mum in my recent one about classic rock.
Yeah. Did you study English A level or something?
No, not at all. No, I didn't start reading till late. Let's say I was from a poorish background. Yeah, mum and dad are lovely, but we were poor
Yeah.
when we were younger, and it just I had like I don't think I read a book until I probably early teens.
Yeah.
But then I did get into it, and I'd started to love fiction, fantasy, sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I studied environmental science at Bangor.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. You should write a biography.
yeah, I just can't be bothered. Yeah, my blog's kind of like stuff I've been doing, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's a bit, a lot. Some climbing stuff's just a bit similar, isn't it?
Yeah, I
Pulled up
know.
on these little
I think
holds, had my eyes bulging.
yeah, I know. So I personally, I'm not a reader. The only thing I do read is information, especially when it's like psychology stuff. But I struggle with stories. The only book for me that stands out that I read, or a couple of books that I read cover to cover, but I think the one book that really stood out that I thought was quite good was Psycho Vertical from Andy Kirkpatrick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I've not read that. I do like Andy, and
yeah,
he's funny. He's
he's
so
quite
funny.
funny. Yeah, he's very funny. I felt it was quite down to earth, and it was to do with something that I was planning to go and do. So I guess it kind of inspired me too. Read some other books, but I think a lot of books I start to read and sometimes struggle to get past the first chapter.
Yeah, so I loved. I mean, it's fiction, but I loved Heather Dore's recent book, "Dreams of Lost Buttresses."
Okay, no, haven't
I
read
think
that.
it's called. It's all fiction. I think there's a bit up on UK climbing about the Ravens one. It's about Raven Crags in the Lake District, and I love it.
Okay,
And there's a few stories that I really, you know, uh, could felt an attachment to the stories that she's put in there. So I'd definitely, I'd say I'd read that thing on UK climbing,
yeah.
and see if you like it. And if you like that, then I'd get the book.
What is it? Dreams of
Dreams of Lost Buttresses, I think, is
Lost.
the name of it. But yeah, if you look on UK climbing now, and Heather Dawes or Heather Daw and Dawe,
Yeah.
and yeah, there's an article about the Raven Crag one,
Okay.
and I think it's a brilliant, piece.
Yeah. I think the only other couple of books that stand out are, what was it? A Day in the Eye of the Tiger. Uh,
Oh, is it about Alex McIntyre?
yeah,
Yeah,
about alpine approach in the Himalayas. Uh,
yeah. That's Brian. Is it Brian's book?
I don't know. I struggle with names, so I can't remember. I can remember the picture on the front. And then what's the other book that kind of that I still remember is I think Nick Bullock's first book.
Tides, Echoes,
Maybe
Echoes. Yeah,
I
Echoes.
can't remember. Yeah, it's I guess it's
Yeah, it's good about the prison service stuff.
yeah.
I love Deep Play as well. Uh, from Paul Pritchard.
Right.
So Deep Play, a lot about Clonberis 80s scene, doing dangerous routes at Gogarth. Yeah,
Yeah,
Paul. Yeah,
yeah, quite historical, right?
Lycra ridden generation.
Yes, yeah, and that's hopefully not going to come back.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope not.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for your time, James.
Thanks a lot for having me, Kevin. Yeah, I love to speak to you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Initially, it was going to be Emma interviewing you, but she wasn't sure that it would be a serious conversation.
We'll just be laughing, yeah, taking the piss.
Yeah, that's maybe one for next time. See, I think maybe I'll have a chat with Emma, but I think I'd love to maybe do a podcast on relationships and see how that goes.
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool. Amazing. Thanks for your time.
Awesome. No, thanks a lot, Kevin. Have a great day.
I hope you guys all really enjoyed the chat I just had with James McHaffie and his kind of mindset and his track climbing experience. If you have any suggestions about any people you'd like us to interview or any topics that you'd like us to cover, kind of send us a message on social media or send us an email. And hopefully we'll see you guys soon.